From the Desk with Jada Montemarano, conversations with the innovators, leaders, and experts who are shaping the future of human resources through cutting-edge technology. Only on the Purple Acorn Network.
Welcome back to From the Desk with Jada Montemarano, the podcast where we explore the intersection of technology, talent, and transformation in the world of HR. I'm your host, Jada, and every week I'll be sitting down with innovators, leaders, and experts who are shaping the future of human resources through cutting-edge technology. We're going to be discussing trends, hot topics, and dive into the tools and strategies that are helping these companies improve how they attract, retain, and support their most valuable asset, their people. So if you're into innovation, making smart hires, or you're applying yourself, you're in the right place. So grab a drink, hit play, and let's get into it. This is From the Desk with Jada Montemarano, where we bring you the hottest HR news from the desk right to you. And today's guest is a true trailblazer in the world of HR and technology. We have Sarah White, the founder of Aspect 43 and HR Tech Circle. With a career that spans over 2 decades, Sarah is dedicated to transforming how we hire, manage, and retain talent through innovative technology solutions. Her firm works closely with both companies and practitioners, conducting in-depth surveys and focus groups to shape the future of HR. Sarah is also a highly sought-after advisor, strategist, analyst, and speaker who has been lauded as one of the most influential voices in HR and talent tech by outlets like HR Executive Magazine and TA Tech Association. Thank you so much for being with us today, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Of course. And on that note, reading your accomplishments, talking about being considered in the top 100 influential people in the space. When you hear that word influencer, what does that mean to you? How do you use your influence in this HR space specifically? Because that is such a buzzword right now, influencer, but it means different things for different people.
It is. What's crazy is we actually started the first influencer programs in the HR tech and TA tech space 16 years ago. And so back in the day of blogging, before first social media was even coming out, we were bringing in influencer or influential bloggers and writers to come into different events and work with vendors at those events and really help get the word out about different technology and products. It has definitely changed a lot as social media and everything came into play. And so now it's really a really interesting mix where you have very distinct types of influencers. And so you have the job seeker type of influencers, which are really heavily popular on things like TikTok. You have more of the HR or the recruiter influencers, which are often sometimes on LinkedIn. They were a little bit more popular on Twitter, but they're often at the events and are talking and doing things at those type of things. And then you have the analysts, which is a smaller group. And there's only a small number of analysts in the space, and they're the ones that are actually going out and doing research and writing a little bit more unbiased, like than you would find with some of the other influencers. And then myself, I've kind of done all of those, but our firm actually does strategy work now with vendors. And so we are actually taking the voice of all the practitioners, taking the voice of job seekers, taking the voice of employees, and taking that back in and completely redesigning products. Really, like we're changing product roadmaps and we are changing how you are being marketed to and how events are ran and the type of content you're looking for. And so there's all different type of influencers. Very few of us actually do dances on TikTok.
Yeah, do we do HR dances? How do we bring that into play?
There are a couple. Yeah. So I'm on TikTok, but it's around go-to-market and strategy. But there are a couple of HR dance groups on there.
I love to hear that. You got to make it interesting to the public and relatable too, because a lot of these words, we were speaking about this a little bit earlier, people don't know. It's a little bit confusing. So being such an early innovator in the influencer space, the blogging space, what do you think the benefits are of bringing this type of information directly to the people? And most of the people watching, I'm assuming, are going to be the people applying for jobs, right?
No, actually none. Almost nobody that we would be doing anything with. The audience of people applying for jobs is really brand new, just as the market has shifted. And so a lot of the people that are actually influencers in that world our former recruiters that were laid off. And so they're now doing resume writing. There's also just a ton of scammers, quite honestly, in that space. Most of the rest of us are actually working directly to help do education to recruiters, HR teams, leadership, management, employees around how we can create better hiring practices, how we can create better employee experiences, how we could do things differently, improve diversity, how do we improve inclusion, like how do we change the world of work for the better?
Have you seen that doing TikTok or blogs or Instagram, Twitter, all of these different social medias, or X as we have to call it now? Have you noticed that this, I know, right? Have you noticed that this has helped the HR talent acquisition hiring world, having all of this information so readily available and having these conversations, or even a podcast like we're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it has changed a lot. It was very hard to find information. Now there's almost too much information. And so the challenge now is how do we sift through who is actually giving valid, truthful information, who is just sharing what they're paid to share? Where are some of these relationships that are not being disclosed? And I think right now that for most practitioners is going to be the hardest thing to kind of work through as we move into 2025. We are expanding HR Tech Circle out from being more of a training type of site into a full resource site, because we are hearing from so many practitioners that it's really challenging for them to get the right information that they can trust to make better decisions. They want to be better consumers of the technology that they are buying. They want to understand the business impact of it. They want to understand how to talk to their leadership about it. They want to understand how to best adopt and utilize it. And they need to get that information, but they don't always have the budget to do so. And so as a foundation for us as a business, it was really important to me that all of our content, all of our practitioner-facing research is 100% for free to every practitioner, HR, recruiter, talent leader, whatever their role is. They have full access to all of our stuff 100% for free.
And right now, we are in a tumultuous hiring world, job market. So for these companies, recruiters, HR that are coming to you to use your services, what are the main things that they are looking for help with? Or what are the main things that you guys are focusing on to cater to them to say, hey, you need to know XYZ?
So in order to keep an integrity standard, we actually offer no paid services at all to practitioners or to talent and HR teams. Everything that we do for them is 100% for free. And in exchange, they participate in our research. And so they'll see our state of HR tech, our state of TA tech come out, and they provide their feedback to us, and we're able to take that and make the changes. But what we are hearing from them in that research is they're really frustrated by the technology. So the people that are selling the technology are not always explaining it correctly, or the technology doesn't meet some of the basic requirements. And they also have so much of it. You have an average TA team has 40 to 70 different products that they're trying to work within. And so we're going to see some massive consolidation. But with that, they also don't want to give up some of the best in class things that they had before. And so it's going to be a really interesting mix. The other thing that we are hearing quite a bit of is how do we simplify things? One of the biggest mistakes that's happening with a lot of the vendors is they're actually selling still, and they're presenting things of like, here's how we can save you money. Here's how we can cut costs. When what people really need is time. They're tired. We're tired, right? Like it has been 4 long years of a pandemic. And then this year was whatever this was. And so people are like, how do you make my life easier? And the vendors that are really listening, and we do have the benchmarking. I know we talked a little bit about that, but a lot of the vendors have the option to benchmark. So they can actually send our survey out to their specific customers, their specific clients or prospects. And so they can understand how to better relate to their customers. How do we provide the right type of content they're looking for? How do we actually meet the needs that they're looking for? How do we make sure we have the right products? And so the companies that get it, and they're trying to make life easier instead of simply trying to sell.
And you were talking about this year we've had and everything kind of changing since the pandemic. a lot of that has been shifting to remote work or hybrid now we're going into, which is very different hiring practices than ever before. You don't have to meet in person for interviews anymore. A lot has changed. So from your research and your surveys and your focus groups, what are these evolving needs for both the employers and the employees just in this new state of work?
I think one of the most interesting things that we're finding is over the last 5 years, the expectation changes every single year. And I think this is because everybody's still trying to figure this out. The employees are trying to figure out, no, I want to work at home. Actually, maybe I don't. I want to go in the office. Actually, no, definitely I don't. I want to do hybrid. Well, kind of, but I want to be able to select my own time. Or it's a shift of like, actually, I'm most focused on the benefits, or I'm most focused on comp and pay or leadership. And so one of the things that we're going to be very heavily focused on in our Q1 research is really understanding what those job seekers' expectations are. What do they actually want? Because nothing has changed more than this. Flip side, when we're looking at some of the larger trends, though, that we have seen, is that they're looking just to be heard. And I think if anything came out of COVID for all of us, we just want to be seen. And I don't know a simpler way to say that, right? We want to be seen by our family. We want to be seen by our partners. We want to be seen at work to show that we have value and impact and are worthy of like everything that we're giving up is worth something bigger. And what's interesting is they don't care about tying back to a social program or any of those. They just want to personally know that they are making an impact and making a difference. And so I think that overall, on the company side, we've seen a really big shift towards retention. And so it was always like recruiting. There's so many people we can replace. And we're starting to see, actually, let's get people that we can retain and train and reskill and do some of these, which is ironic with all of the layoffs. But that's more the focus, is how do we keep people for the longer term?
And I was going to say that you mentioned a lot of the job seekers are looking for employers that will see them. But then on the other end, we're seeing employers right now just doing these mass layoffs and not seeing the people. Also, we hear a lot about employers not getting back to job seekers after rounds of interviews or not getting back to the application. So in your mind, is there a solution to all of this? Because you're seeing both sides want one.
Yeah. And I think, about 2 years ago, when we predicted there was about to be mass layoffs in 2021, 2022, we wrote a guide on ethical layoffs because sometimes they happen. There's a lot of bigger things with some funding that was coming in for every employee. There's just a lot of things that were causing us to be able to have very low unemployment for a period of time. And when that went away, there just wasn't the revenue. And in other cases, there was just a greed factor, right? There's a whole different reasons, but layoffs sometimes have to happen regardless of what it is. There could be a division isn't going to be working, but we can do them ethically. And I think that was one of the things that was really missed. I mean, there was a story today which got me all crazy. And by the time this post will be much longer, but a company in India did a wellness check and a stress check-in on all of its employees, and then fired everybody that reported that they had stress out of the kindness for their own compassionate heart for stress. And you get things like that. And I think that's what a lot of times we hold on to instead of the companies that are like, look, we're not going to be able to keep these people long-term. We're going to give you a 9-month severance to help you try to get to that next level. We want to make sure that you're not caught off guard when the business is actually gone. And so we're seeing companies really either do the have or have nots with the layoffs, the technology and the applying and all of that side of it. There's just too many applicants coming through for the number of recruiters that are left to have to kind of go through and weed all of this. There's also all of these crazy fake things about there's little magical AI fairies that are actually doing this. I assure you the technology is not that good. It is, I work on the back end of this. There's a couple of small startups that are doing these things, but these are not things that most companies dare implement because they're not tested, they're not validated, so they might be getting a lot of PR and publicity, but nobody's actually utilizing them. And on the flip side, you also have a lot of recruiters behind the scenes saying, well, welcome to 2020, 2021, when we were trying to hire you and you wouldn't even show up for an interview and you were bashing us all over. And now you want our help. And so it's a little bit of healing that needs to be done on both sides to realize we're entering a whole new world and a whole new territory that nobody has ever seen before. We haven't seen a market like this since 2007.
Yeah, it's scary for everyone, but great to be having these conversations now about it. And as you mentioned, the layoffs and the recruiters were getting laid off. Do you think there's technology that will replace the recruiters? Like you're saying, it's not widespread used, or do you think companies are going to have to hire back all of these recruiters they let go?
Very unpopular opinion. All of these jobs are not coming back, right? Okay. I know everybody hates when I say that, but that's just the reality. And not just in recruiting, really across the board. The jobs are going to change. Will we ever bring 100% of the same number of jobs back? Probably not, because it's not necessary anymore. We can do so much with automation, which is actually a much bigger impact on companies than AI is. We just have lumped it together as if it's one thing. The other thing with recruiting specifically, I've been hearing that everything has been a recruiter killer since 1999 when we were first starting to work on applicant tracking systems, right? And it's been true, right? When we brought applicant tracking system, I was a head of talent. We brought our first applicant tracking system in-house 2002-ish timeframe. I was able to remove 8 people off of my team because of this one thing. Well, I also had a person whose full-time job it was to print, staple, and collate every single resume. And I would get bins of resume. Every single one of my recruiters got mail bins delivered 3 times a day of resumes that they would sometimes have to take home because we didn't really have laptops in the same way and stuff wasn't online. And so not all progress or changing of jobs is bad. That person ended up becoming an HR internal analyst and what we now call HR ops. And so there's different roles and we're just going to have to adjust. People that are unwilling to adjust are going to not be very happy.
And speaking of all of that, what is the state of HR tech right now?
So we will know very soon when the research is done. And so really, we index about 75 categories of HR tech and TA tech and about 35 categories of marketing and sales tech. And what we're really trying to see is where and how things are shifting, both around buyer behavior and our expectations around things. But what that also tells us is what is actually happening on the front end. So if we know there's a large investment in talent acquisition systems, we know that more companies are actually getting ready to hire. And so we can look at things kind of backwards, forwards versus asking hey, are you hiring this year? We can see where the money is actually going and how their investments are actually being made. Some of the key things that we are really starting to see, though, is definitely a continuation of a focus on automation, heavier focus on employee referrals, very high focus on the employee experience and what it actually feels like from the second you start until the second you leave. How do you manage your own career? Internal mobility, how do I do my own skills training versus what it used to be of okay, well, here's your next job, here's your path. It's really giving people the opportunity and chance to kind of control their own journey and their own path.
And a lot of people now are working for themselves and finding ways to have multiple jobs or multiple streams of income. Is that impacting the way companies are recruiting or hiring, knowing that a lot of people are now looking out of companies to do things themselves?
I don't think so. It's a lot smaller than we want to pretend, right? It's definitely a very online thing to be doing. It really isn't for most people. Most people don't have the time. I barely have time to shower most days, right? Between kids and a business and job and hobbies and friends and family and all of these other things, right? Most people are not doing these multiple income streams. it is definitely something much more prevalent in young millennial and in Gen Z. It's going to be something that's going to have a massive impact in the next 3 to 5 years, but it's not enough where they're feeling the pain about it now. But because it is coming, it's something that we are very focused on and building into product roadmap now, so that when it does happen, we're able to start flipping the switch. We have a couple of very large vendors that are going to be fully ready to work within the guidelines of this, and being able to have people that are flexible workers that can come in and out but are still W-2 versus being contractors, or even becoming consultants within their own business where they can just switch between departments as needed. I think the specialist roles are actually going to start going away, and we're going to find a little bit of a resurgence of the generalists that we just haven't seen in 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, I feel like that's how everybody is kind of focusing. Everybody either lost their job or had to transition during the pandemic, and that mindset, I feel like, kind of stuck with everyone, and also just the state of hiring these days. So it was great to hear your opinion on that. And the way we started the conversation was talking about all you've done and how you are an influencer, so to say, in this space. So are there any big projects you're working on this year? And do you have any plans, conferences coming up that people can keep an eye out on to be influenced from?
Yes. So we are currently booked at about 14 events throughout the US and Europe for 2025. But I think the biggest areas are going to be the HR Tech Circle, which is going to be officially launched in January of 2025 as a true free resource center for talent acquisition professionals and HR professionals to be able to come and get information, to learn more about the different technology and learn how to buy the technology, learn to make decisions if something is actually right for them or not. They don't have to sign up for anything. They can just, it's completely no gatekeeping at all. The other thing that I would just say is the research that is coming out. If you happen to see this, I'm sure hopefully we will have a link somewhere. Do the research, do the survey. The feedback is so important, and it actually does make massive changes about how you are marketed to. We are on a mission to try to stop all cold calling and cold emailing in this industry. And we are using data, one company at a time, to be able to stop this from happening, or at least greatly reduce it. And so, unless you really love it, then tell us how much you love it and why we're wrong. But really, we're just trying to make sure that we're connecting and giving practitioners a voice, giving job seekers a voice. Let's change the way things are doing, so decisions aren't made top down, but they're actually made bottom up.
Well, thank you so much for that and your work. It gives us a little bit of a silver lining out there for viewers or listeners out there who are maybe feeling frustrated or defeated in the job world. There are companies out there, there's Sarahs out there trying to help the situation. So we appreciate it, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for joining us. And thank you everyone for listening today. You can catch us every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And if you're hungry for other Purple Acorn shows, you can head to purpleacornnetwork.com and Purple Acorn on LinkedIn. See you next time with On the Desk with me, Jada Montemarano.